I'm Kelly Keel, and I'm out here at the Mohawk Stamp Mill in Gay, Michigan in Keweenaw County, and I'm out here to talk about stamp sands for my research project. A lot of people don't realize that Michigan was the site of the first biggest mining boom in America. It was bigger than the California gold rush, and there's a lot of cool relics left behind from that era. These relics inspired me to write this paper. When I first moved up here, I noticed them all over the place and I came to explore them, and I was really fascinated and shocked by what I found. And this paper gave me an opportunity to learn more about what was left behind and what it does to the environment. So the four major points of my paper are: what are stamp sands, what's their environmental impact, what's being done about them, and can the problem be solved? So here at the Mohawk Stamp Mill, this was a site where they processed iron ore and copper. It's not the mining site. They would mine it somewhere else and then bring the product here where they would process it to try to get the copper out of the rock. So they processed it by stamping it, and that's why it's called a stamp mill. They would crush the big pieces of rock and then extract the copper from it. Everything that's left over from that process is called stamp sands, and it's waste because it's useless. These stamp sands have caused a huge problem up here. There's tons of them left, and I'm going to show you that right now. But first, let's look around at the remains of the stamp mill. Sorry, I'm really cold. So the California gold rush started in 1849, but the copper rush up here in Michigan started in 1843. And at the height of the boom, they were harvesting 157,000 tons of copper per year. And these are the remains of one of the stamp mills here. As you can see, it's all messed up now, but it's still pretty cool. And out there is Lake Superior, and you can kind of see the stamp sands from here. We're gonna go out there and see what's going on, but I just wanted to show these cool remains here. So as we get further away from the stamp mill, we can see that there's already these sands all over the ground. Basically, they would get what they wanted out of the rock. They would get the copper, and then all this stuff would just get dumped because it is of no use. But wait till you see just how much of this stuff there is. So here we are out in the middle of the stamp sand world. As you can see, it goes on forever. These things are everywhere. And according to my research, there are 22 million cubic yards of this waste left behind. Sorry, out of breath. And people don't know what to do with it. You can't get rid of it. It's toxic, and it's just sitting here. That's where I was just standing up there. Now we're down here on the beach, and behind me you can see these massive cliffs made out of stamp sands. So now that you know what stamp sands are, it's time to talk about the environmental impacts of what stamp sands do. So first of all, this isn't good. The beach should not be made of not natural sand. One of the biggest problems created by stamp sands is it's getting into the water, and this is causing a major problem for local wildlife, and we'll talk about that more later. Check this out. This is the mountain of stamp sands. This is what stamp sands look like. They're dark. Whoa. And they come here and make their way directly into the water and out into the lake. Okay, so now we are at Big Traverse Bay. This is my favorite beach to come to in the summer. I bring the kids here and everything. We are south of where we just were, so up that way. You can kind of see the stack maybe if you look close enough, but that's where Mohawk is, up that way. So we're south now here, and there's a big issue that the stamp sands have created out in the water here. A lot of people know what a coral reef is, and I didn't know until I wrote this paper that there are more than just coral reefs. A reef is anything that's in the water that's like a structure in the water. So out in Lake Superior, there's something called Buffalo Reef, and it's out there. We can't see it, but it's there. And Buffalo Reef is made of stone. It's like cobblestone, and it's a place where whitefish and trout lay their eggs and make their babies. And stamp sands are threatening Buffalo Reef dramatically. At the time I wrote this paper last week, stamp sands were 5 miles away from Buffalo Reef, coming more towards it, and the reef was already 35% covered with stamp sands. Michigan Tech University has technology that projects that in 5 or so years, 60% of Buffalo Reef will be covered with stamp sands, and whitefish and trout will no longer be able to use it as a place to spawn their babies. So if we lose Buffalo Reef up here because of stamp sands, we lose whitefish, we lose trout, and that's a big problem. For one, it's bad for the environment. If one species or 2 species of animal goes extinct or can't live anymore, it threatens the entire food chain. And it's bad for humans because we need those fish. For one, we sell them and people come here to fish for them. So we'll get a big hit in the tourism department and we won't be able to export the fish anymore. So that's not cool, stamp sands. Another thing that stamp sands do is they mess with the way waves move. Their presence in the water changes the way that waves come up to the shore. It changes the direction of the waves, and that causes erosion of the beach, and that causes flooding of local homes, like this very nice home here. So stamp sands do more than just affect fish. They affect the shoreline, the beach, humans, and animals. Okay, so we're about 17 miles south of where we were at Big Traverse Beach now, at the site of the Quincy Stamp Mill in Houghton County. And this is right near where I live, and I have to drive by this every day, and I've probably driven by it 1,001 times. There's like 2 separate issues here. There's the Mohawk Stamp Mill in Lake Superior, which got the stamp sands dumping into Lake Superior. And then the second one is this place, the Quincy Mill, and its influence on Torch Lake, which is across the street. So Quincy Mill took their stamp sands and they just conveniently dumped them into Torch Lake over here. Let's go look at that. We're here at the lake shore of Torch Lake. This is the famous dredge that can be seen from the road. I don't know what a dredge does. I don't know why it's here, but here it is. And this is the site of where the stamp sands were dumped. I'm actually very familiar with the term Superfund. A couple of years ago when I first moved up here, I learned about Superfund sites and I did a little Google search to see where Superfunds were. I was living in Houston, Texas, which is awful. And when I moved up here, I'm like, I'm in pure Michigan now. And of course there's not gonna be a Superfund near me. Actually, this is a Superfund site and it's right near where I live on the body of water right near my house. This is a Superfund site, which means it requires government intervention because it is so toxic. According to mineralogists, which are people that study the chemical makeup of rocks, there was a big mineralogy study done on the rocks here, and it found that the rocks that the copper was in before it was extracted, that they're rich in arsenic and mercury. So when they took the stamp sands and dumped them into this water, they just filled this water full of arsenic and mercury. Now they've done tests, it's kind of like an ice core test where they drill down into the soil and they can see, you know, the years on the soil like in like a tree with rings, and they know that during the height of the mining era here, arsenic and mercury was being deposited into the soil at 1,000 times any normal rate. So it was saturated with toxic chemicals. So what is the environmental impact of tons and tons and tons of toxic sand being dumped into a lake, and now the lake being filled with mercury and arsenic? The fish are poisoned. Now, some studies will say that the fish are okay to eat, but there was a do not eat order put on the fish in Torch Lake, and I wasn't able to verify if that is still active or not. But I mean, are you gonna eat the fish? This water is nasty. You can see how rusty looking it is, and it's got weird stuff left in it. And it's really unfortunate because it's such a pretty area, but it's just been decimated by people from the past. Okay, so we are at the Lake Linden Village Campground and Park. It's like an RV park, and it's at the northern end of Torch Lake. We're about half a mile from my house. This is my town, this is where I live. And here is the lake. This is the northern end of Torch Lake, so we were just down there a couple miles where the dredge is, and this is where the lake kind of ends up here. We were talking about the mercury poisoning in the water and how it's made the fish toxic. Now we know that as humans we should avoid contact with mercury. So if you were to eat too much fish that had mercury in it, you could get mercury poisoning, and that's especially important for pregnant women. They need to avoid mercury. And if you eat the bigger fish, then you're gonna get more mercury. So clearly fish here are not desirable, and that's unfortunate. Now, if you were to eat the fish, okay. I mean, I can't find evidence for sure that it's still bad, but here at the Lake Linden Park at Torch Lake, there's a sign here. It says, the Village of Lake Linden advises, due to potential hazards posed by arsenic and lead wastes present in the soil and sediment as a result of historic activities in this area, parents should monitor children when playing in the beach area. Avoid digging in the soil or disturbing the sediment. Wash hands at the washing station before eating. Avoid tracking soil and sediment away from the beach on one's body or belongings by using the washing station. Now, if you don't even want to get the dirt in your car or on your body or on your child, do you really want to eat the fish that's in the water? Something tells me it's still very unsafe here. Here's a look at the water, and again, it's very rusty colored and supposedly toxic. Okay, so now that we've gone over what stamp sands are and what they do to the environment, now it's time to talk about what's being done about the problem of stamp sands. So there's a lot of things that people try to do to fix the problem of the stamp sands. The first thing that I noticed myself is that they take them and they spread them all over the road when it's snowy. I actually reached out to someone at Michigan Tech and I asked them to verify, are the stamp sands what they put on the roads when it snows? And they said yes. And I had some questions about that, because when the snow melts, the stamp sands go back into the drain and then they go back into the water. And the person at Michigan Tech said, yes, they do put them on the roads, and it's undetermined if they go back into the water or not. We're in the streets of Lake Linden right now, and here's a drain, and these are stamp sands next to the drain, left over from winter season. They actually started doing street sweeping here probably yesterday. They started cleaning up the streets after the winter season. But I came out and took pictures before that to show the stamp sands going down into the drains. But still, here's the road, and there's some leftover sands, and this says that this drains into the waterway. Dump no waste. Dump no waste. But there's the stamp sands, and they definitely go back into that drain. I just pulled over here on my way home to show a little bit of this mess here. So this is a pile of sand on the road, and it's totally covered in stamp sands. and there are sands all over here. I think that officials are just so desperate to get rid of that massive sea of stamp sands that they just want to get rid of them so badly that they pick up piles of them and use them on the roads to try to make that pile a little bit less. But I don't really feel like it's helping anything. If anything, it's not good to spread the poisonous stuff all over the town, around animals, and back into the drains. But hey, what do I know? Okay, so ending here at my house, which is actually called a miner's shack. It's a house, but it was built back in the mining era and miners lived in it, which is pretty cool. We'll talk about some of the other things that they are trying to do to stop the stamp sands. So aside from getting big piles of them and putting it on the road, some other projects that have been green lighted are they want to dredge the bottom of Lake Superior and get the stamp sands up out of Lake Superior to save Buffalo Reef. They've also talked about building a wall between that big massive pile of stamp sands and the lake, perhaps like a actual wall or maybe a wall of trees or a natural wall to try to keep them from blowing back into the lake. And they've also talked about picking up the stamp sands off of that area and taking them out to the deepest part of Lake Superior and dumping them out there where nothing lives, apparently. And they've also tried to think of new inventions using stamp sands. They want to try to turn them into concrete, and I've also read about them being used as fertilizer for crops and things like that. So it's ongoing. The problem of stamp sands is ongoing, trying to be solved. Can the problem of stamp sands ever fully be resolved? The answer to that is nobody knows. It's still there, it's still happening, and nobody knows if it'll ever go away, if the reef is going to be lost, if Torch Lake will ever be safe again. Nobody knows. So that's the problem when the environment is misused. You often don't see the damages for years to come, and then once they've been done, they're hard to undo. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation about stamp sands. I hope that you learned something, and I hope you got a nice view of the Keweenaw Peninsula. You should come visit sometime. It's very nice here, aside from the toxic water. Thank you.